The diplomatic vessel Horizon drifted through space toward Coalition Central Station. Inside the ship's command center, Captain Danny Morrison watched the massive structure grow larger on the viewing screen. The station was enormous, built by dozens of alien species over 300 years. It represented everything humanity hoped to join. Danny ran a hand through his dark hair and glanced at his second-in-command. Lieutenant Helen Baker stood beside him, her posture relaxed but alert. She had been with him for 5 years, and he trusted her judgment completely. "How are you feeling about this?" Helen asked quietly. Danny considered the question. "Nervous. Hopeful. This could change everything for Earth." The Galactic Coalition controlled most of the known galaxy. They maintained peace, facilitated trade, and protected smaller species from threats. For humanity, membership meant access to technologies that could solve problems that had plagued Earth for generations. It meant being part of something larger than themselves. But it also meant being evaluated, judged, categorized. The docking procedure went smoothly. Within an hour, Danny and Helen walked through the station's corridors toward the main council chamber. The halls were filled with beings from across the galaxy, tall, crystalline creatures that hummed when they moved, small, furry beings that scurried in groups, massive armored warriors who towered over everyone else. Those warriors were Kralliks. Danny had studied their culture extensively during the journey. The Kralliks were the Coalition's military backbone. They loved combat, lived for honor in battle, and respected only strength. They protected the weaker species and maintained order through force when necessary. Ambassador Vok waited for them in the council chamber. He was Kralix, standing nearly 7 feet tall with dark blue scales covering his body. His eyes were golden and sharp, evaluating Danny and Helen as they entered. "Captain Morrison," Vok said, his voice deep and rumbling, "welcome to Coalition Central." "Thank you, Ambassador," Danny replied. "We're honored to be here." Beside Vok stood a very different figure. Counselor Shen was Venturi, a species known for their commitment to peace. She was small and slender, with pale green skin and large, gentle eyes. Where Vok radiated power, Shen projected calm. "Please, sit," Shen said warmly. "We have reviewed your application. We have many questions." The meeting lasted 3 hours. Danny and Helen answered carefully, presenting humanity's achievements in science, medicine, and engineering. They spoke about Earth's diverse cultures, its history of overcoming challenges, and its desire to contribute to the galactic community. Then Vok asked the question Danny had been dreading. "Tell us about your military capabilities," the Kralliks ambassador said. "Every species must defend itself. What warriors do humans produce?" Danny chose his words carefully. "We maintain defensive forces. Our primary focus is on protection of our home system and peacekeeping operations. We believe in diplomatic solutions when possible." Vok's expression showed clear disappointment. "But you do have warriors? Soldiers who glory in combat?" "We have soldiers," Helen interjected smoothly. "But they serve out of duty, not desire for battle. Humans prefer to avoid conflict when we can." Shen smiled at this. How refreshing. "The Venturi also believe violence should be a last resort. It is good to meet another species that understands this." The questions continued. Danny and Helen deflected inquiries about weapons technology, battle strategies, and military history. They emphasized humanity's peaceful intentions, their scientific achievements, and their willingness to learn from more established coalition members. Vok seemed to lose interest as the meeting progressed. To him, humans were clearly another weak species that would need Krallik's protection. Shen, however, grew more enthusiastic. She saw humans as kindred spirits, another voice for peace in the council. After the formal meeting ended, Danny and Helen were given quarters on the station. They would stay for 2 weeks while the council deliberated on humanity's application. 3 days later, Danny found himself in the station's observation deck. The massive windows offered views of the surrounding space, with ships coming and going in a constant flow. He stood alone, watching the activity when someone approached. It was a young Kralix named Thax. He was smaller than Vok, but still imposing, his scales a lighter blue that marked him as barely into adulthood by his species standards. "You are human," Thax said. It was not a question. "I am," Danny replied. "Captain Danny Morrison." "I watched your presentation to the council," Thax continued. His tone carried something that made Danny cautious. "You spoke much of peace, of avoiding conflict, of diplomacy. These are important values to my people." Thax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "My people have a saying. The prey speaks of peace while the predator is absent. You fear battle, human. You hide behind soft words because you lack the strength for hard actions." Danny felt Helen approach before he saw her. She had been across the observation deck, examining some alien plants. Now she stood beside him, her expression calm, but her eyes locked on Thax. "Is there something you wanted?" Helen asked quietly. Thax looked at her with open contempt. "I wanted to see the faces of those who will hide behind Kralix warriors when danger comes. Now I have seen. You are exactly what I expected." He turned and walked away, leaving Danny and Helen standing by the window. Danny noticed Helen's jaw was tight, her hands clenched. He had seen that look before, though not often. "Easy," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Helen took a slow breath and released it. "I'm fine." "I know you are. But we're here as diplomats, not—" He trailed off. "Not what we really are," Helen finished. "I know, Captain. I know." They left the observation deck together. Behind them, several aliens had witnessed the exchange. They had seen the young Kralix warrior mock the humans. They had seen the humans retreat without defending themselves. It confirmed what many in the coalition suspected. Humans were afraid of confrontation. They lacked the warrior spirit. The following week, the Council delivered their decision. Humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition. They would serve in support roles, human doctors would join medical teams, human engineers would assist with technical problems, human scientists would contribute to research projects. But humans would not serve in military positions, they would not be given combat assignments, they would not be trusted with strategic roles in coalition defense. This was not meant as an insult, Counselor Shen explained gently. It was simply recognition of humanity's nature. Every species served according to their strengths. Humans would excel in their peaceful roles. Danny accepted the terms without protest. He thanked the Council for the opportunity to serve. He promised that humanity would prove valuable to the Coalition, even in limited capacities. Ambassador Vok watched this acceptance with satisfaction. Another weak species properly categorized. Another group that would shelter behind Kralix's strength when threats emerged. Only Counselor Shen seemed to sense something underneath Danny's calm acceptance. Something in his eyes that did not quite match his words. But she dismissed the thought. Humans feared war. Everyone could see it. There was nothing else to understand. 6 months passed since humanity joined the Galactic Coalition. True to the Council's decision, humans served exclusively in support roles. They did not complain. Instead, they excelled. Dr. Amy Foster worked in the Coalition's main medical center on Station 7. She was a trauma surgeon who had trained in some of Earth's most dangerous regions. Here, she treated injuries from a dozen different species, learning their biology quickly and adapting human medical techniques to alien physiology. The head physician, a Kralix named Korthan, initially doubted her abilities. Humans were soft, he thought. How could they handle the brutal realities of combat medicine? But after Amy saved 3 Kralix warriors from injuries that Korthan had declared fatal, his opinion began to change. "How did you know to try that approach?" he asked her after she stabilized the third warrior. Amy cleaned her instruments with steady hands. "On Earth, we deal with massive trauma regularly, vehicle accidents, industrial incidents, natural disasters. We have learned to improvise." "Your hands do not shake," Corthan observed. "No," Amy agreed. "They stopped shaking a long time ago." In the engineering division, human technicians revolutionized maintenance procedures. Greg Patterson led a team that reduced ship repair time by 40%. He introduced concepts of modular design and rapid replacement that the Coalition had never considered. When a Venturi supervisor asked how humans thought of such efficient methods, Greg smiled. "We spent a long time building things that could be repaired quickly under difficult conditions. Sometimes you need to fix something while other things are trying to break it." The supervisor did not fully understand the comment, but the results spoke for themselves. Human engineers became highly valued across Coalition facilities. Commander Kevin Walsh headed a research team on the remote planet Epsilon 7. They studied ancient ruins left by a civilization that had vanished millennia ago. His team included linguists, archaeologists, and analysts. They worked slowly and carefully, documenting everything. One afternoon, a rival expedition arrived. They were funded by a Kralix trade consortium that wanted exclusive rights to any technology found at the site. Their leader, a tall Kralix named Drex, approached Kevin's camp with 6 armed guards. "This site now belongs to the Corvin Consortium," Drex announced. "You will leave immediately." Kevin stepped forward calmly. His team gathered behind him, watching the confrontation. "This site was registered to Coalition Research Division 4 months ago. We have legal claim." "Legal claims can be disputed," Drex said, resting his hand on the weapon at his belt. "We are prepared to enforce our position. Are you?" Kevin studied the armed guards. He looked back at his team, noting their positions and expressions. Lieutenant Paul Chen stood near the equipment tent, his posture relaxed but balanced. Amy Foster, who was on loan to provide medical support, had moved slightly to the side with a clear view of the situation. Then Kevin made his decision. "No," he said simply. "We're not prepared to engage in armed conflict over an archaeological site. We'll withdraw and file a formal complaint with the Council." Drex smiled with satisfaction. "A wise choice for a species without warriors." Kevin's team packed their equipment and left the site within 2 hours. On the ship back to Coalition space, Amy sat beside Kevin in the common area. "That was the right call," she said quietly. "Was it?" Kevin replied. "We spent 4 months cataloging that site." "You know what would have happened if we stayed," Paul said from across the room. 6 of them armed and aggressive, 9 of us, officially unarmed civilians. Kevin nodded slowly. "It would have ended badly. For them," Paul added softly. No one disagreed. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carr reviewed reports from humans serving across Coalition space. She sat in her office at Fleet Command, reading accounts of human performance. The reports were universally positive. Humans were valued for their skills, their dedication, and their willingness to help. But she also read other reports. Private communications from her people in the field, messages that told a different story. Captain Danny Morrison sent regular updates. He now commanded a human crew assigned to transport duties, moving supplies and personnel between Coalition stations. His reports described how aliens treated human personnel, patronizing kindness from the Venturi, dismissive contempt from the Kralix. General assumption from everyone that humans were useful, but weak. Lieutenant Helen Baker included her own observations. She cataloged incidents where humans were excluded from planning sessions, overlooked for leadership positions, and generally treated as capable assistants but never as equals. The Coalition appreciated human help, but did not respect human capabilities. Admiral Carr found this frustrating but not surprising. She had argued against this approach from the beginning. She wanted humanity to be honest about their nature from the start. But the diplomats and politicians had overruled her. They wanted membership in the coalition, and they were willing to be patient. So Carr waited, she prepared, and she hoped they would not need what she was preparing. At the Coalition Military Academy on Fortress Prime, human cadets trained alongside aliens from across the galaxy. The Academy accepted 50 humans in its first intake, spreading them across various programs. Paul Chen attended as part of Earth's commitment to coalition integration. He was placed in the logistics and support track, not the combat command program. This was standard for human cadets. The Academy administration saw no reason to train humans for roles they would never fill. Paul's roommate was a Venturi named Lyra. She was kind and friendly, excited to meet another member of a peaceful species. They studied together, ate meals together, and became genuine friends. One evening, they sat in the Academy's common area reviewing tactical scenarios. The assignment was to plan supply lines for a hypothetical military operation. Paul completed his plan in half the time the instructor had allocated, then helped Lyra with hers. "You are very good at this," Lyra observed, "understanding how resources move, where vulnerabilities exist. I struggle with these exercises." "It's about seeing patterns," Paul explained. "Every system has dependencies. You find the critical points and protect them. Or if you are on the other side, you identify them and disrupt them." "But we are learning to protect them," Lyra said. "Why would you think about disrupting them?" Paul realized his mistake. Just being thorough. Understanding both sides of a problem helps you solve it better. Lyra accepted this explanation. Later, she mentioned something that had been on her mind. The Kralix cadets sometimes say cruel things about humans. They call you weak. They say you will hide when danger comes. "People believe what they want to believe," Paul replied. "Does it bother you, being seen as less capable?" Paul considered his answer carefully. "My people have a saying. Better to be underestimated than overestimated. There is safety in being overlooked." "But you are not weak," Lyra said. "I have seen you in training. Your reactions are fast. Your thinking is clear. You could be a combat officer if you wanted." "Maybe," Paul agreed. "But wanting to do something and being willing to do it are different things." "I don't understand." Paul looked at his friend, this gentle being who truly believed violence was always wrong. How could he explain to her what humanity had learned? How could he make her understand that humans did not avoid war because they could not fight it, but because they knew exactly how to fight it? "Humans fear war," he said finally. "We fear it because we remember." "Remember what?" "What we are capable of," Paul said softly. "What we have done to each other. What we have learned about ourselves." Lyra wanted to ask more questions, but something in Paul's expression stopped her. She sensed this was not a topic he wanted to explore further. Instead, she changed the subject to their upcoming exam in xenobiology. Paul was grateful for the change. Some truths were too heavy to share casually. Across coalition space, similar scenes played out repeatedly. Humans performed their duties with excellence. They saved lives, solved problems, and contributed valuable skills. But they were always kept away from conflict. Always sheltered. Always assumed to be too gentle for the harsh realities of military operations. The Kralix warriors accepted this as natural. Weak species needed protection. That was the purpose of strong species. They did not resent humans for their weakness. They simply categorized them and moved on. The Venturi celebrated having allies in their philosophy of peace. They saw humans as validation of their belief that violence was never necessary. If another species could thrive while avoiding conflict, it proved the Venturi way was correct. Neither group understood the truth. Neither saw what humans carefully did not show them. The discipline that kept human reactions controlled. the training that made their movements efficient, the experience that let them assess threats instantly and accurately. Admiral Carr read one final report before finishing her day. It came from Commander Vex, a Kralix instructor at the military academy. His evaluation of human cadets was thorough and fair. He noted their intelligence, their dedication, and their technical skills. He recommended them highly for support roles, but at the end of the report he added a personal note. Human cadets consistently choose de-escalation in combat simulations. They withdraw when pressed. They seek alternative solutions rather than engaging directly. This is species-typical behavior. They lack the warrior spirit. They should not be assigned to combat positions. Admiral Carr set down the report and stared out her window at Earth below. Commander, the warning came during a routine council session. A Kralix patrol at the edge of Coalition space had detected something massive approaching their territory. Before they could gather more information, contact was lost, completely and suddenly. Within hours, 3 more patrols went silent. Then an entire monitoring station stopped transmitting. The Coalition Council convened an emergency session, and what they learned chilled even the Kralix warriors. The Zareth swarm had arrived. Ambassador Vok stood before the council, his usual confidence shaken. We have confirmed reports from the colony world of Palix 3. The Zareth attacked without warning. The entire planet fell in less than 18 hours. Population was 4 million. No survivors have been located. Councillor Shen's face had gone pale. How is that possible? Palix 3 had defensive installations. Kralix garrison forces. The Zareth do not fight as we do, Vok explained grimly. They attack in overwhelming numbers. They do not seek honor or glory. They simply consume and move forward. Our warriors engaged them bravely, but they were outnumbered 50-1. Captain Danny Morrison sat in the observer section, representing humanity. He listened carefully to every detail, his expression neutral. Beside him, Lieutenant Helen Baker took notes on a data pad, her fingers moving quickly and efficiently. The briefing continued. 2 more colony worlds had been attacked. Kralix battle fleets had engaged the Zareth at the second world. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Kralix fought with their usual courage and skill. They destroyed hundreds of Zareth ships, but thousands more kept coming. The Zareth did not retreat. They did not fear death. They simply pressed forward with relentless determination. The Kralix fleet was forced to withdraw after suffering 30% casualties. The colony was lost. 30%? A Venturi counselor gasped. The Kralix have not suffered such losses in generations. We have never faced an enemy like this, Vok admitted. The words clearly pained him. They do not respond to our tactics. Individual Kralix warriors are superior in every way. But the Zareth do not fight as individuals. They fight as a single entity, accepting any losses to achieve their objective. The council chamber fell silent. For 300 years, the Coalition had relied on Kralix military superiority to maintain peace. The warrior race had seemed invincible. Now they were bleeding. Councillor Shen turned to the military advisors. What are our options? The senior Kralix commander, General Thax, stepped forward. He was the father of the young warrior who had mocked Danny months earlier. We are mobilizing every available fleet. We will establish defensive lines at the Corvin sector. The Zareth advance will be stopped there. And if it is not? Shen asked quietly. Thax did not answer immediately. Finally, he said, then we fall back to the next defensive line, and the next. We will trade space for time while we develop new strategies. How much time do we have? Another counselor asked. If the Zareth maintain their current pace, they will reach the core coalition worlds in 6 months, perhaps less. The council chamber erupted in shocked conversation. 6 months. half a year before the Zareth reached worlds where trillions of civilians lived, where the Venturi homeworld lay, where dozens of species had built their civilizations. Danny waited for the chaos to settle, then raised his hand. Vok noticed and called for quiet. The human observer wishes to speak. Danny stood. The Coalition has our deepest sympathy. If there is anything humanity can do to help, we are ready. We can assist with refugee transport. Our medical personnel can treat wounded. Our engineers can help fortify defensive positions. We need warriors, not assistants, Thax snapped. Can humans provide military forces? Danny's expression remained calm. I must consult with Earth Command before committing human forces to combat operations. This is not a decision I can make alone. Vok slammed his fist on the table. While you consult, species die. We need soldiers now, not diplomatic delays. I understand the urgency, Danny replied, but I must follow proper procedures. I will transmit a priority message to Admiral Carr immediately. Admiral? Vok seized on the word. Humans have admirals? Military ranks? We have defensive forces, Danny said carefully, as all species do. Whether those forces are appropriate for this situation is something my superiors must decide. Thax made a disgusted sound. Defensive forces? You mean ships that have never seen real combat, soldiers who play at war but fear true battle. Danny did not rise to the bait. I will send my message now if the council permits. Shen nodded, and Danny left the chamber with Helen following. Once they were in a private communications room, Helen turned to him. That went as expected, she said. Better than expected, Danny replied. Vok is scared, genuinely scared. I have never seen a Kralix admit weakness so openly. The casualties are worse than they are saying, Helen observed. 30% losses in 6 hours. That is not a battle. That is a slaughter. Danny activated the secure transmitter to Earth. It would take several hours for the message to reach Admiral Carr and for her response to return. In the meantime, they would gather every piece of intelligence available on the Zareth. Across Coalition space, panic spread. The Venturi began evacuating their border colonies. Smaller species looked to their Kralix protectors and found them suddenly vulnerable. Trade routes collapsed as merchant ships refused to travel near Zareth-controlled space. 3 days passed. The Zareth took 2 more worlds. Kralix fleets engaged them at the Corvin sector as planned. The battle was massive, involving over 2,000 ships. The Kralix fought with desperate courage. They employed every tactic they knew. They accepted casualties that would have broken any other species, and they lost. General Thax retreated with less than half his fleet intact. The Zareth had suffered enormous casualties, but they did not care. More ships appeared from their territory to replace those destroyed. The swarm kept coming. Counselor Shen found Danny in one of the station's observation areas. He was watching the stars, his expression distant. She approached quietly, not wanting to disturb him if he wanted privacy, but he noticed her and gestured for her to join him. I wanted to apologize for Ambassador Vok's harsh words, Shen said. He is afraid. We all are. No apology is needed, Danny replied. He spoke the truth as he sees it. Humans have not proven themselves in combat. But you have defensive forces. Surely they could help, even in small ways. Danny turned to face her fully. Counselor, can I ask you something? Why do you think humans avoid military service? Because you are peaceful, Shen said, like my people. You understand that violence brings only suffering. We do understand that, Danny agreed. Better than you know. But that is not why we avoid it. Before Shen could ask what he meant, Danny's communicator chimed. Helen's voice came through. Captain, you need to return to communications. Admiral Carr is on the line. Danny excused himself and hurried to the communications room. Helen was already there, and the secure channel was active. Admiral Carr's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. Captain Morrison, I have reviewed your situation report. I have also consulted with the President and the Security Council. We are authorizing military intervention. Danny felt something release in his chest. Understood, Admiral. What are your orders? I am bringing the 5th Fleet to Coalition space. We will arrive in 72 hours. You are to gather all available intelligence on Zareth fleet movements, tactics, and capabilities. I want to know everything before we engage. Yes, Admiral. What should I tell the Coalition Council? Carr considered this. Tell them help is coming. Tell them we will engage the Zareth, but make it clear that human forces operate under human command. We coordinate with Coalition forces, but we do not take orders from them. Can you secure those terms? Given their situation, yes. They will agree to anything right now. Good. One more thing, Captain. You will need to explain to them what we are, what humans are. They think we are weak. That assumption needs to be corrected before we arrive. Danny nodded slowly. That will be a difficult conversation. I know, but it is necessary. They need to understand what they are asking for when they request human military intervention. We are not Krallick's warriors seeking glory. We are something else entirely. The transmission ended. Danny sat in silence for a moment, then looked at Helen. Are you ready for this? I have been ready since we arrived, Helen replied. The question is whether they are ready. Danny returned to the council chamber. Emergency session was still ongoing. The counselors looked exhausted and afraid. Reports kept coming in of Zareth advances. The swarm was unstoppable. Counselors, Danny said, drawing their attention, I have received authorization from Earth Command. Humanity will commit military forces to engage the Zareth swarm. Relief flooded the chamber. Even Vok looked grateful. When will your forces arrive? 72 hours. Admiral Lisa Carr is bringing a fleet to Coalition space. How many ships? Thax asked. I do not have exact numbers, but it will be sufficient. Vok leaned forward. Captain Morrison, I must ask directly. Do your people have combat experience? Real experience, not training exercises? Danny met his gaze steadily. Yes, extensive experience. Then why hide it? Vok demanded. Why pretend to be weak when you have strength? This was the moment. The conversation Admiral Carr had warned him about. Danny took a breath and prepared to explain something the galaxy was not ready to hear. Because we are not proud of our strength, Danny said quietly. Because we know what it costs. Because every human who has served in combat carries scars, visible and invisible. We do not hide our military capability out of shame. We hide it because we hope never to need it. That makes no sense, Thax said. A warrior should be proud of their skills. We are not warriors, Danny replied. Warriors seek glory in battle. Warriors fight if the human fleet arrived exactly 72 hours after Admiral Carr's transmission. It did not arrive with fanfare or dramatic displays. The ship simply appeared at the edge of Coalition Central's sensor range, moving in perfect formation toward the station. Ambassador Vok and Counselor Shen stood in the observation deck, watching the approaching vessels. The fleet was different from anything they had seen before. Krallick's warships were built for intimidation, covered in weapons and armor plating that announced their purpose. These human ships were sleek and efficient, with clean lines and minimal decoration. They looked more like surgical instruments than weapons of war. How many ships? Vok asked the station's tactical officer. 37 capital ships, the officer replied. Plus support vessels. Total fleet strength approximately 80 ships. Vok frowned. That is a respectable force, but not enough to turn the tide against the Zareth. We lost more than that at Corvin Sector. The lead ship, a carrier designated Valiant, docked at Coalition Central. Admiral Lisa Carr came aboard with a small group of officers. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a simple style. Her uniform was plain, without the medals and decorations that Kralix officers wore. But there was something in the way she carried herself that made people step aside as she walked. The council convened to meet her. Carr entered the chamber and nodded respectfully to the assembled counselors. Captain Morrison and Lieutenant Baker stood beside her. "Thank you for coming," Counselor Shen said. "We are grateful for any assistance humanity can provide." "We are here to stop the Zareth," Carr replied. Her voice was calm and even, without emotion. "But I need to make our terms clear before we begin." "Terms?" Vok's tone carried warning. "We are facing extinction. This is not the time for negotiations." "These are not negotiations," Carr said. "These are requirements. Human forces will operate under human command structure. Coalition forces may coordinate with us, but you do not direct our operations. We need complete intelligence on Zareth positions, fleet strength, and civilian locations. And most importantly, you need to understand what you are asking for." "We are asking for help defeating an enemy," General Thax said. "No," Carr corrected. "You are asking us to go to war. These are not the same thing." She activated a holographic display that showed human military history. Images appeared of battles fought across Earth's centuries, not glorious paintings or heroic statues, but raw footage of actual combat. Cities in ruins, soldiers with haunted eyes, weapons that could end civilizations. "This is what humans are," Carr said quietly. "We have fought wars for our entire recorded history. We have developed weapons that can destroy planets. We have created strategies that can break entire civilizations. We are very, very good at organized violence, and we hate every moment of it." The council watched in silence. The images were disturbing, not because they showed brutality, but because they showed efficiency. Humans fought with cold precision, not passion. "The Kralix fight because they love battle," Carr continued. "You seek glory and honor in combat. You test yourselves against worthy opponents. Humans do not fight for glory. We fight to end the fighting as quickly and completely as possible. We do not seek worthy opponents. We seek to remove threats with maximum efficiency and minimum exposure." Vok was beginning to understand, and the understanding disturbed him. "You are saying humans are not warriors?" "Correct. Warriors fight for honor. Soldiers fight because they must. Humans stopped being warriors thousands of years ago. We became something else, something more dangerous." Shen looked at the images. "But you said you fear war." "We do," Carr agreed. "We fear it because we are good at it. We fear it because we know what we are capable of. We fear it because we have looked into that darkness and found it looking back at us. The Kralix fight to prove their strength. Humans fight because something must be protected or destroyed, and we have accepted the burden of doing what must be done." She turned off the display. "So, before we engage the Zareth, I need to know that you understand this. When human forces enter combat, we do not fight your way. We do not seek honorable engagement or glorious victory. We seek to stop the threat by whatever means is most effective. Are you prepared for that?" Thax spoke after a long pause. "At the Academy, we teach that there is honor in battle, that warriors should respect their enemies and fight with courage." "Those are beautiful ideals," Carr said, "and in a perfect universe, they would be enough. But the Zareth do not care about honor. They care about survival and expansion. You cannot defeat them with ideals. You defeat them by being better at violence than they are." "And humans are better at violence," Vok said slowly. "Yes," Carr confirmed. "Not because we are stronger or more aggressive. Because we have practiced it longer and learned from more mistakes than any species should have to make. We are the species that went to war with ourselves and won. That makes us very dangerous to anyone else we go to war with." The council granted Carr's terms. They had no choice. The Zareth were advancing, and the Kralliks alone could not stop them. Within hours, the human fleet deployed toward the front lines. Captain Morrison now commanded the destroyer Pathfinder, part of the main battle group. His crew was entirely human, trained and ready for what was coming. Lieutenant Helen Baker served as tactical officer. She stood at her station, monitoring Zareth movements with cold efficiency. Beside her, Lieutenant Kyle Sanders handled communications. Their professionalism was absolute. Zareth fleet detected at Tertian 4, Helen reported. Approximate strength, 2,000 ships. They are bombarding the colony from orbit. Civilian population? Danny asked. 3 million. Evacuation is incomplete. Approximately 1 million still on the surface. Danny absorbed this information without visible reaction. Fleet status? All ships ready and in formation. Admiral Carr is holding position at jump point 7. On the Valiant, Admiral Carr reviewed the tactical situation. The Zareth had done exactly what her analysis predicted. They committed overwhelming force to the colony world, expecting to take it before coalition reinforcements arrived. It was the same pattern they had followed at every engagement. But humans did not fight like the coalition fought. The Kralliks would have charged forward to meet the Zareth in glorious battle. They would have tried to match strength against strength. Humans did not do this. Execute Plan Serpent, Carr ordered. The human fleet split into 3 groups. One group jumped to the far side of the Zareth formation. Another appeared above their position. The third remained at the jump point, cutting off retreat. The Zareth, detecting threats from multiple directions, did what they always did. They divided their forces to meet all threats simultaneously. They had numbers. They could afford to fight on multiple fronts, but the human groups did not engage directly. Instead, they targeted specific ships in the Zareth formation, not the biggest ships or the most dangerous. They targeted supply vessels, communication relays, command ships. Within 30 minutes, the Zareth fleet found itself blind and confused. Their ships could not coordinate effectively. Their supply lines were disrupted. They had 2,000 ships, but they fought as 2,000 individuals, not as a unified force. Then the human fleet struck. Quick, precise attacks that destroyed key targets and withdrew before the Zareth could respond. No glorious battles, no honorable duels between ships, just efficient removal of threats. The Zareth tried to adapt. They attempted to form defensive positions. The human fleet anticipated this and targeted those positions before they could solidify. They tried to chase the human ships. The human fleet led them away from the colony and into prepared kill zones. Throughout the battle, Admiral Carr watched from the Valiant. Her expression never changed. She issued orders in a calm, quiet voice. There was no excitement, no pride in the destruction they were causing. Only grim determination to complete the mission. Zareth fleet is breaking formation, her tactical officer reported. They are attempting to retreat. Pursue and eliminate, Carr ordered. No survivors reach their staging area. On the Pathfinder, Danny coordinated his ship's role in the pursuit. Helen tracked fleeing Zareth vessels with mechanical precision. When targets appeared in range, she eliminated them with single shots. No wasted effort, no excess destruction, just cold, efficient removal of threats. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the Zareth fleet was destroyed, not defeated, not forced to retreat, completely destroyed. Of 2,000 ships, none escaped to report what had happened. Human casualties were minimal. 3 ships damaged, 0 ships lost, 47 personnel injured, 2 killed. The colony at Tertian 4 was saved. Human medical teams landed to assist with wounded civilians. Human engineers helped repair damaged infrastructure. But the colonists looked at their rescuers with something that was not quite gratitude, something that looked more like fear. Coalition observers had watched the battle from safe distance. They recorded everything. Now they brought that recording back to Coalition Central, where the Council viewed it in horrified silence. They watched human ships move with coordinated precision. They watched the systematic dismantling of a force that had destroyed Kralek's battle groups. They watched the cold efficiency of humans at war. "This is not battle," Vox said quietly. "This is execution." This is what humans meant, Shen realized. When they said they fear war. When they said they are not warriors. This is what they were trying to tell us. Commander Vex, the academy instructor, sat in the observation area. He had evaluated human cadets as lacking warrior spirit. Now he understood his mistake. Humans did not lack warrior spirit. They had moved beyond it into something more terrible. Warriors fought for glory and honor. They tested themselves against opponents. They respected their enemies. What humans did was not fighting. It was problem-solving with violence. The Zareth were a threat. Humans identified the most efficient method to eliminate that threat. Then they executed the method without emotion, without pride, without mercy. Vex thought about the human cadets he had taught. Their calm demeanor, their preference for de-escalation, their choice to withdraw rather than engage. He had interpreted this as weakness. Now he saw it as restraint. They chose not to fight because they knew exactly what they could do when they fought. The Kepler void was a region of space between two spiral arms of the galaxy. It was dark, empty, and far from any inhabited systems. The Zareth had chosen it as their main staging area precisely because of its isolation. From here, they could launch attacks in any direction without warning. Admiral Carr's fleet arrived at the edge of the void 19 days after the battle at Tertian IV. Intelligence reports indicated the Zareth had gathered their remaining forces here, perhaps 5,000 ships, maybe more. It was the largest concentration of Zareth vessels anyone had ever seen. On the Pathfinder, Captain Danny Morrison reviewed the tactical data with his command crew. Lieutenant Helen Baker stood at her station, her expression focused and calm. Lieutenant Kyle Sanders monitored communication channels, listening to Zareth transmissions that human computers translated in real time. "They are afraid," Kyle reported. "The Zareth are communicating more than usual. They know we are coming." "Good," Danny said simply. "Fear makes mistakes." The human fleet did not attack immediately. Instead, they established a perimeter around the void. Any Zareth ship attempting to leave was destroyed. No warnings, no chances to surrender. Just immediate elimination of anything trying to escape the net. Then Admiral Carr began the siege. Human ships did not charge into the void to engage in massive battle. They simply waited at every exit point. The Zareth were trapped. On Coalition Central, the Council watched these developments with growing confusion. Ambassador Vox could not understand the human strategy. "Why do they not attack?" he demanded. "They have the Zareth surrounded. They should press their advantage." Counselor Shen studied the tactical display more carefully. "They are not fighting. They are isolating. The Zareth cannot leave. They cannot receive supplies. They cannot get reinforcements." "But this could take months," Vox protested. "The honorable thing is to meet them in battle." "Humans do not care about honor," Shen said quietly. She was beginning to understand these strange beings who had joined the coalition. They care about effectiveness. Inside the Kepler void, the Zareth grew desperate. They tried to break through the human blockade. Wave after wave of ships charged at the perimeter, seeking any weakness. The human fleet destroyed them methodically. No dramatic battles, no heroic last stands. Just cold, efficient elimination of threats. Commander Kevin Walsh, leading a science vessel, analyzed the Zareth behavior patterns. He transmitted his findings to Admiral Carr. "The Zareth are a swarm intelligence. They operate as a collective, but their communication depends on quantum relay ships scattered throughout their fleet. If we identify and destroy those relay ships, we can disrupt their coordination." Carr reviewed the data. Can you identify the relay ships? We have been monitoring their communications for 3 weeks. Yes, we can identify them. Send the coordinates to all fleet elements. Prepare for coordinated strike. The attack came at midnight station time, though time meant little in the void. Human ships penetrated the Zareth formation in multiple locations simultaneously. They ignored the bulk of the swarm. They targeted only specific vessels, the relay ships that Kevin's team had identified. The strike lasted 23 minutes. Then the human ships withdrew, leaving chaos behind them. The Zareth fleet, suddenly unable to coordinate as a unified swarm, began moving erratically. Ships crashed into each other. Attack patterns fell apart. The swarm became a mob. The human fleet waited outside, watching the confusion spread. No one celebrated this success. It was simply the next step in the plan. On the Valiant, Admiral Carr opened a communication channel to the Zareth. Her transmission was broadcast in multiple languages that human linguists had decoded from captured communications. This is Admiral Lisa Carr of the human fleet. You are surrounded. You have no supply lines. You have no reinforcements. You have no communication network. You can choose to continue fighting, in which case we will destroy every ship in this void. Or you can surrender. Those are your only options. The response came after several hours. The Zareth wanted to negotiate terms. They wanted safe passage. They wanted guarantees. Carr's response was direct. You will surrender unconditionally. You will provide all data on your civilization, your territory, and your technology. You will accept coalition monitoring of your activities. You will never expand beyond your current borders. Accept these terms or be destroyed. You have 12 hours to decide. Ambassador Vok listened to this exchange with disbelief. She is giving them an ultimatum. The Zareth have 5,000 ships. They could still fight. They could, Counselor Shen agreed, but they would lose. And Admiral Carr has made it clear that humans are willing to destroy them completely if necessary. The Zareth must choose between survival under restrictions or total annihilation. It is not really a choice at all. 10 hours later, the Zareth surrendered. They transmitted their acceptance of all terms. They provided the data Carr had demanded. They agreed to permanent restrictions on their expansion. The war was over. The threat that had seemed unstoppable, that had cost the Kralliks thousands of warriors and dozens of colony worlds, was ended in less than a month by human intervention. But no one celebrated. The Coalition Council demanded a meeting with Admiral Carr. They gathered in the main chamber, and this time the atmosphere was very different from previous meetings. There was respect, yes, but also fear. And many questions. Carr attended with Captain Morrison and Lieutenant Baker. She stood before the council with the same calm expression she always wore. You have saved the Coalition, Counselor Shen began. But we must understand what we have witnessed, the way you fight, the strategies you employ, the cold efficiency of your operations. This is not how warfare is conducted in Coalition space. I know, Carr replied, because Coalition warfare is conducted by warriors. Humans are not warriors. General Thax leaned forward. You destroyed the Zareth without honor. You attacked their supplies instead of their soldiers. You disrupted their communications instead of meeting them in battle. You gave them an ultimatum that left them no dignity in surrender. Correct, Carr agreed, because dignity in warfare is a luxury. Honor in battle is something only victors can afford to consider afterward. We did not come here to prove ourselves or to test our courage. We came to stop a threat. We accomplished that mission. Vok struggled with his emotions. But where is the glory? Where is the test of strength that makes a warrior worthy? There is no glory in war, Lieutenant Baker said quietly. She had remained silent until now, but something in Vok's question demanded response. There is only necessary action and regret. Every human in this fleet wishes we had not needed to be here. Every action we took weighs on us, but we did what had to be done. I do not understand, Vok admitted. You are clearly superior warriors. You defeated an enemy that we could not. But you take no pride in this. Captain Morrison stepped forward. May I explain something, Ambassador? On Earth we have fought thousands of wars, not over centuries, but over millennia. We have refined warfare to an art form and then to a science. We have developed weapons that can end our entire species. We have created strategies that can break civilizations. And in doing all of this, we learned something that warrior races never learn. What is that? Shen asked. That winning a war is easy compared to living with what you did to win it, Morrison said. Every human commander who gives orders in combat knows those orders will haunt them. Every soldier who follows those orders carries the weight of their actions forever. We do not avoid war because we fear losing. We avoid it because we know exactly what we become when we fight. Admiral Carr continued the explanation. The Kraliks fight because they love battle. That is your nature, and there is nothing wrong with it. But because you love it, you fight with rules and honor and codes of conduct. You make warfare into something beautiful. Humans cannot do that. When we fight to end the fighting. We use whatever methods are most effective. We do not consider honor or glory or testing ourselves. We consider only what needs to be done to protect what must be protected. And that makes you more dangerous than any warrior race, Shen said, understanding finally dawning. Because you do not fight for pride. You fight with absolute commitment to victory. Yes, Carr confirmed, which is why we fear war, which is why we tried to avoid military service in the coalition. We hoped to leave that part of our nature behind. We wanted to be the species that helped and healed and built, but you needed us to be what we have always been. So we came, and we did what we are good at. And now you understand why we never wanted to show you this. The council chamber was silent. Every member struggled to process what they had learned. Humans were not weak. They were not cowardly. They were not unsuited for military service. They were simply too suited for it. Too good at organized violence, too effective at destruction. Commander Vex, attending as a military observer, finally spoke. At the academy, I evaluated human cadets. I wrote that they lacked warrior spirit. I was wrong. They do not lack it. They have mastered it and then learned to control it. Every time they chose de-escalation, every time they withdrew from confrontation, it was not weakness. It was restraint. They knew what they could do, and they chose not to do it. Until they had to, Paul Chen added. He had come to Coalition Central as part of the human delegation. Human cadets train for support roles because we hope those are the only roles we will need. But every human in any service branch knows how to fight. We all carry that knowledge. We just prefer not to use it. Counselor Shen addressed Admiral Carr directly. What happens now? The Zareth are defeated. Will you withdraw your forces? Our fleet will return to Earth, Carr replied. But I expect the Council will want to reconsider humanity's role in the coalition. You are correct, Vok said heavily. You cannot return to support roles, not after what we have seen. The galaxy knows now what humans are capable of. We are not warriors seeking glory, Morrison reminded them. We do not want to become the coalition's military arm. We understand, Shen said. But perhaps there is another way. Perhaps humans can be what they have always been. The species that goes to war so others do not have to. The ones called upon only when all other options have failed. Admiral Carr considered this. A last resort. Yes. The coalition's Department of Last Resort, when diplomacy fails, when defense falters, when threats emerge that cannot be handled through normal means, then humanity responds, but only then. Only when truly needed. Carr looked at Morrison and Baker. Something unspoken passed between them. Then she turned back to the council. We would accept that role, on one condition, that everyone understands what they are asking for when they call on us, that they know we will do what must be done, not what is honorable or glorious, that they accept the burden of knowing what we are. We understand, Vox said quietly. Perhaps better than you know. The Kraliks respect strength. We have seen yours. But we also respect wisdom, and there is wisdom in fearing what you are good at. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would serve as the coalition's last resort. They would be called upon only in the direst circumstances. The rest of the time, they would continue in their support roles, helping, healing, building. But everyone would know the truth now. Everyone would understand that human kindness was a choice, not a limitation. That human peace was an achievement, not a default state. That humanity's restraint came from strength, not weakness. Captain Morrison walked through Coalition Central's observation deck one final time before returning to Earth. Lieutenant Baker joined him and they stood together watching the stars. "Do you think this will work?" Helen asked. "Being the species everyone calls when they need monsters?" "We are not monsters," Danny replied. "We are humans. We do terrible things when we must, and then we carry the weight of those things forever. That is what makes us different from actual monsters. The Kraliks think we are superior warriors now. Let them think that. It is better than what we really are." "Which is?" Danny was quiet for a long moment. "The species that learned to fear itself. The one that looked at what it was capable of and chose to be better. We are not superior warriors. We are reformed ones, and that is so much harder." They returned to the Pathfinder. The human fleet departed Coalition space, returning to Earth. Behind them, the galaxy tried to understand what it had witnessed, a species that could fight with terrifying efficiency, but chose not to. A people who feared war precisely because they understood it so well. The Zareth remained in their territory, broken and monitored. They would never threaten the Coalition again. Not because they could not, but because they understood what would happen if they tried. Peace returned to Coalition space. But it was a different peace now. One maintained not just by Kralik's honor, but by the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, humanity waited, ready to respond when called, capable of terrible things, afraid of what they might have to do, and willing to bear that burden so others would not have to. That was the truth the galaxy had learned. Humans did fear war. They feared it more than any warrior race could understand, because humans knew that the real danger was not in losing a war. It was in winning it and becoming something you could never stop being. And humanity carried that knowledge with quiet determination, hoping they would never need to prove it again. And what they could do was terrifying. Admiral Carr transmitted to Coalition Central. "The Zareth fleet at Tertian 4 has been neutralized. We are moving to engage their main staging area in the Kepler Void. Estimated time to completion, 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Not months, not years. 3 weeks to end a threat that had seemed unstoppable." The Council watched the human fleet depart. No one celebrated. No one felt relief. They had asked for help. They had received it. But now they understood what they had unleashed. Humanity had gone to war, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again, or honor. Warriors love what they do. Humans do not love war. We are very, very good at it. But we hate it. Every moment of it. Every necessity that forces us into it. We fear war not because we will lose, but because we know exactly what we become when we fight. The council chamber was silent. Shen looked disturbed. Vok looked confused. None of them understood what Danny was trying to tell them. Helen stood beside Danny. "In 3 days, you will see what humans are. I hope you will still want our help after you do." She and Danny left the chamber together. Behind them, the council struggled to understand what they had just been told. a species that was good at war but feared it, soldiers who fought without pride, warriors who were not warriors. It made no sense to them. But in 72 hours, when Admiral Carr's fleet arrived, they would begin to understand. And that understanding would change everything they thought they knew about humanity. Vex was wrong. Humans did not lack the warrior spirit. They had refined it over thousands of years of constant warfare. They had mastered it, perfected it, and then learned to fear it. Humans chose de-escalation because they knew what escalation meant. They withdrew because they understood the cost of engagement. They sought alternatives because they had seen what happened when alternatives failed. But the galaxy did not know this. And for now, that was acceptable. Humanity would serve in support roles. They would be helpful and peaceful and unthreatening. They would let others believe the comfortable lie that humans feared war because they were weak. The truth would wait. The Horizon departed Coalition Central a day later, carrying Danny and Helen back to Earth. They would return with more human personnel to fill the support roles the Coalition had assigned. Earth's government was disappointed with the limited membership, but accepted it as a starting point. In his quarters, Danny composed his report to Admiral Lisa Carr, the military liaison who had prepared him for this mission. He described the meeting, the Council's decision, and the assumptions the aliens had made about humanity. At the end of the report, he added a single line. "They believe we fear war because we are weak. We did not correct this misunderstanding." Admiral Carr would read that line and understand. The truth would wait. For now, humanity would play the role assigned to them. They would be helpful, peaceful, and unthreatening. They would let the galaxy believe what it wanted to believe. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing a warrior can do is let others think they are not a warrior at all.